So I want to leave this here for posterity's sake. When you're looking at the connector, the yellow wire on the far right is going to be the shared ground between the cam and crank. The middle pin is the actual trigger wire, and then the wire on the far left is to the shield. So I'll go ahead and I'll tape this up with Testa tape, but I'll leave that there for posterity. So the time has come. The customer and I have not necessarily a disagreement, but I think he and I have finally agreed that I've exhausted all options and there's not much else I can do. So it is unfortunately going to another shop, but hopefully this shop can get them situated. And it's come to the point where you just got to be the adult, you know, put yourself in the customer's shoes. I've had the car here for 6 weeks. We've made like almost 10 videos on this thing, and 8 of them have been basically wiring, you know, trying to figure out this coil issue. So unfortunately it's just going to go to another shop. Hopefully they can get it figured out, but that's not going to stop me from doing the right thing. And what the right thing is we're just going to start wrapping up our wiring here. So what I'm going to do here, even though we ran new crank sensor wiring, I'm going to go ahead and wire this connector back up. And the reason why I'm doing that is that just in case they find out, you know, something's wrong with it, it'll be easy for them to put this all back to where it needed to be, in the sense of like you know how PRP wants the wiring through the factory stuff. So what I've just basically done is I've just kind of started making attachments here. I normally don't solder things, but because this is shielded, I'm going to go ahead and solder it. And then we've got our heat shrink here that we're going to heat shrink that, and we're just going to wrap this all up. So I've put the cover back on. You know, we've made some small adjustments to the coolant or the oil feed line and the V-band here, you know, just small stuff, just trying to get this thing done. One thing I do want to mention is that there's a hard curve here. We did shorten this a little bit, and so this clamp actually is on the beaded end right here, so it is actually sealed. It just doesn't look good, and I think, you know, we can go back and cut this down here, make sure that this is sealed, and that should be good there. But my focus is just going to be wiring, so I'm going to go ahead and just preemptively wire this here and clean this all up so that it's ready to go for the customer and the next shop who ends up working on it. But I'll leave that there. We had to order another connector and shielded wire. I'm not going to hook that up. I'll let them do it if they need to, so I'll leave this here as that. But I do want to go ahead and get that DT connector done. So, all right, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this or not, but basically what we have here is a total of 12 pins, with 6 going to the drive-by-wire pedal and then 6 going to the actual drive-by-wire throttle. So we've got a 12 pin DT connector here that we're going to use to wire it into the EMU. We've got a couple wires here, so what I like to do is kind of group them together is what I like to do. So for instance, you know, this top row will be a 5-volt power, sensor ground, then input, and then 5-volt, and then, you know, you repeat the same 5-volt sensor ground signal, and on the bottom you do the exact same thing. That way when someone's diagnosing it, they can look at it relatively quickly and figure it out. And then you obviously group it by sensors. So the 2 TPS, which are the actual throttle body, I'll put on the top, and the accelerator position, which is the pedal, I'll put on the bottom. You know, and that way, like I said, you can diagnose it pretty quickly. And the cool, so after 10 or 15 minutes of just kind of looking around to see where the best place is for the ECU, and we ended up finding it here. So on the very bottom here, there was a hole that was just there. It didn't seem like it was threaded, so I took a bolt and a nut and I put it in here. And I think that's going to be kind of where the ECU is. That's going to be where the ECU is going to sit. Obviously, I put in the cover that normally goes here for test fitting. The cover here fits perfectly with the ECU here. We're gonna have to figure out what to do about the factory wiring and the EMU wiring, but so we've got the plug and play adapter that we still got to figure out where it goes, and we obviously have the factory harness as well. So we really need to figure out where everything's going to go before we start cutting any wires, but this is a good start for the ECU. Now that we have the ECU mounted and the plug and play unplugged, what we can do is figure out how we need to shorten the wires. So we do know that all the new wiring for the sensors and whatnot will be going into these 2 connectors here, and these go directly into the ECU. The opposing side here goes into the plug and play adapter. So in one of our early videos, we stripped out all the pins that weren't needed in here, so we're going to leave this side alone. We're just basically going to plug this in to the ECU, and that will give us our idea of how long or how short we need to do the wiring. On the EMU black, there's a couple of 5 volts and sensor grounds. So we've got 2 5 volts here, and we've got 1, 2, 3 sensor grounds right here, and they kind of were going all over the place, and they were all tapped into each other, which was making them super tangled and confusing. So I ended up just using just these 2 here. So this is 5 volt and this is sensor ground, and I ended up just making a couple of wires with loops here for sensor ground and 5 volt power, as you can see here. And so these are obviously going to each and every sensor, but we're going to have them go into a DT connector, and then from the DT connector it'll go to their respective spots. So again, I'm just gonna leave this here for now, and then I'm gonna start working. Now that this is done, I can start working on doing the actual sensor wiring itself. So we've got flex fuel, we've got CAN bus wiring, we've got the accelerator pedal here, and so we're going to start cutting all this out, and we're going to go start routing everything where it needs to go, and then hopefully we can get this all cleaned up. So we got a little bit more done. We got harness number 2. We had to trim all this back just so we could label it, and then I've got the excess wire kind of zip tied up. Originally I was going to cut this all down, but I figured it's not really that long, and it also makes it a little bit easier to work with if you ever have to go through and service it. Harness 1 also somewhat done, and this is the same deal too. This one's a bit shorter now, so I did cut off quite a bit of it actually. So this is also a lot shorter, and I haven't zip tied this one up yet just because I wanted to leave it out so I had room to work with. O2 wiring is right here. I'm going to kind of move this out of the way for now, and but right now my goal is, now that H1 and H2 are recovered, I'm going to go ahead and start working on these 2 just to get them done and out of the way. Now the problem with H2 is that there's, I think, 2 wires in here that weren't labeled for anything, and if you go back through here on H2, I only mapped out sensor ground and analog 4, and that was the only things that I mapped out. So I'm gonna have to go through and try to figure out what the remaining wires are, but I want to say they're oil pressure and oil temp. And so our harness is going to look somewhat like this. They're going to get connected together, And these are a little bit on the long side, so not a big deal. We do have the mating connector that goes on this end. So this is the male side, and then we've got the female connector side on this side that we're going to do. So that's what we're going to work on. We're going to work on attaching these two to this connector. Okay, so we got these wires recovered. These aren't recovered just yet. When I say recovered, I mean like they haven't been heat shrink yet. And the reason why we're not recovering these just yet, I'm pretty sure I have the wiring right, but it doesn't hurt to double check. If we recovered this, we would be in a world of hurt. So currently where we're at now, we can still remove the pins and shift them around as needed. So I'm gonna leave that as is for now. And so that's basically harness 1 is done. So now we're going to snip these wires here so that they're even, and then we're going to start attaching harness 2 here to this side. So we got harness 1 and 2 completed here on this side. We still got to go back through and do the opposing side here for this connector to the EMU. So we're going to set this to the side, and we're just going to start looking at this end of the puzzle here. So it doesn't look like much, but we've actually made quite a bit of progress here. I found out that the knock sensor, number 2 knock sensor wasn't even hooked up. So I went ahead and hooked that up. And you see I've got a bunch of loose wires here. These loose wires are all the stuff that we're adding in. So there's quite a plethora of additional wires that we're hooking up here. So it's adding more and more complexity as we go on, but we are making decently good headwind in my opinion. So this right here is to the plug and play adapter, and this side is done as far as the black connector goes. The gray connectors should also be done. There shouldn't be any real fiddling with the gray connectors, with the exception of 2 wires going into the ECU for drive-by-wire outputs, which is here. So I think right now it's safe to say that we can reinstall the plug and play adapter now, since we've got this side done. This one loose wire here on the plug and play adapter side is actually the factory crank sensor wiring. As you guys know, we went ahead and ran new wiring for the crank sensor altogether, but I left this in play just in case that it does work out, or something, they find whatever else is wrong or whatever the problem is, and they can go back to stock wiring relatively easy. It's just a matter of removing the one singular pin on the ECU side for the crank sensor, and then they can plug this guy back in. I was actually looking at this after I plugged it back into the plug and play adapter, but it's like this black wire is a bit too short here, so I'm just going to replace this. They have it tapped for something here, but it's not even being utilized for anything. So I'm pretty sure this is a power ground though, pretty sure of. I'm going to take a look at the diagram here really quickly, and that should be pin 17, which should be power ground. So I'm just going to remove this altogether and then replace it, just so that it doesn't look like it's going to fall apart on us. Plus it'll make the length more manageable. So as you can see here, this black is too short and it's causing everything else to bind up. So we'll go ahead and swap this out while we're here. Okay, so it still looks like a mess here, but I've got the plug and play harness 99% sorted. What's all left is just this 12 volt ignition wire here. So it's tapped all kind of goofy. It's going to a couple different places though, so that's understandable. I'm going to go through and we're just going to try to redo this to see if we can make this a little bit, just a little bit nicer here. I just don't quite know how many of these attachments we actually need for 12 volt wire. So normally the only 12 volt stuff I add accessory wise is the wideband, which is this one, and flex fuel. But this one is running through harness, what I have is labeled as harness number 4. And harness number 4, if I remember right, is actually all sensor type wires. So it's like oil pressure and stuff like that. I don't remember offhand, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. So I'm going to leave this alone for now. Like, I know all these additional ones aren't needed, so we may just kind of lob them off. This harness for the wideband could be a little nicer in the sense that there's 2 wires on the gray side, and these really should be a little bit longer. We've got a little bit more work ahead of us, but everything's looking pretty good. I think if I spend most of tomorrow on this, I can get it all sorted. The reason why I'm stopping is actually just simply because my laptop is out of power. So I've got to let it charge, just because that I have the harness 1, 2, 3 diagram on it. And I also need a little bit of time to kind of figure out how to clean this area up really quick. But as far as these harnesses go, like I said, their length is okay. We had an issue with the gauge being wrong, but using DT connectors will effectively allow us to step down. So from going from, you know, this DT connector, it's allowed us to do step downs, and that's going to work out totally fine. And this harness is going to be coming off directly off the black connector for the most part. So we're just going to have the other end do the same number here. It's just going to be real tight to this side. To think about this other DT connector, and plus all the switch wiring, CAN bus wiring, and all that over here as well. So there's going to be, I think, at least another 1 connector, but it's more likely to be 2 or 3, honestly, DT connectors that is. So we're going to go ahead and try to situate all that. Like I said, it does take a bit of planning, so it's not something that you can just blindly jump into and rush into it. Otherwise you'll just end up with a bunch of connections going every which way, like where this originally started off at. So So I've been getting my ass kicked all day here, but I finally got fuel pressure and oil pressure figured out. So in my earlier videos, I had what I called harness 4. Harness 4 was pinned up all sorts of goofy, but now it all makes sense. So we found out that this blue and red wire and this yellow white, or white yellow rather, I didn't know what they were for. This one had power already, but this one was just cut out in the open. Come to find out, this is for the boost controller. So boost controller has never been hooked up, but I just figured that out. I don't know what this red wire is, but I did get, so I got boost controller figured out, and I've got fuel pressure and oil pressure figured out. Now it's just a matter of pinning them, okay? So on this side of it, drive-by wire is done. We've got both the TPS working and both the APS working. So TPS 1 and 2 was working, but it only had one Excel pedal. So we got both of those working now. I've got the wires ran across here. This is CAN bus. This is for the switches. This is for the VR sensor for the speedometer. And this is the brake switch here. So we got this, and all these obviously need to get pinned as well. So we're going to be burning the midnight oil tonight just to get this all done here. But we are definitely getting our ass kicked. It's starting to get late, but we are definitely getting there. We've got a couple other things done here. So this is the DT connectors for the sensors, and which I have labeled fuel pressure, oil pressure, and electronic boost controller. I've got some labeling done here for this additional wire here. I've got ends starting to crimp on DT ends here. So I had to kind of stop, and I'm gonna just have to figure this out really quick here, but the brake switch wiring here is 12 volt. So generally speaking, everything needs to be grounded. So when you activate it, activates the ground. But unfortunately, this is 12 volt power. So reading on the manual, it says that you can wire this to a switch input, and you can actually have it for 12 volts. I don't know if that's true, but I'm basically going to try that out here in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to wire one of the switch wires on the EMU, and then I'll just wrap it around this really quick, and then I'll test it to see if it works. I'm still a little bit away from doing that, just because I'd like to kind of wrap everything up here. And yes, I know it still looks messy, but we're far from done here. I've got a ton more wiring that I've got to do over here. Flex fuel key on, and the permanent 12 volt wires need to be done here. And then we also have to figure out how to tie in 12 volt into the other side of this connector as well. So on the other side of the connector on this EBC, there's going to be obviously 12 volt, which is going to be key on 12 volt, which is going to be tapped into the EMU, from the EMU to this. And then it also has to go to the wideband as well. So that wiring yesterday was kind of like real goofy looking. So we've got to figure that out here shortly, but that's what we're doing next. So we'll tackle that. It is getting pretty late here, so I may stop for a second just to grab some dinner and then take a break and let everything charge back up. But I'd like to at least get this side of it done, and then at least the switch side, so I can test it. And then this thing is definitely got to go on the charger. All right, so we got CAN bus working. We've got some more wiring figured out in terms of boost controller, 12 volt power. CAN bus is now pinned, and that's working. Now what's left is permanent power, flex fuel, vehicle speed is what's left in terms of wiring. But I definitely got to take a break. It's been about an hour since this last little clip here. So I don't know if I'm gonna just go grab dinner or what. What I'm afraid of is going to grab dinner and not coming back. But we've made some more progress. CAN bus is working, so it's happy there. And then we'll get to it. All right, guys, it's like 9 at night. I just got back from eating a quick dinner. Nothing too crazy, just grabbing some McDonald's or whatever. So we've got a couple more things that we need to wire it up. Mainly this connector here. I've got power, flex fuel, and everything pinned up on this side. I just got to finish the back side, which is the EMU side here. And then after that, I should be good. Once I get this all wrapped up, then I may play around with the power tune display. All right, I got everything wired up. I'm gonna grab my laptop right quick here because it's been charging. I haven't done this in a long time. It's 10 p.m. All right. So hopefully everything goes well and nothing catches on fire, because that would be tragic. It seems like everything is working. So we're gonna just kind of set some things up here. VSS should already actually be set up, because so the only thing that I need to really set up on my end are the two switches. I believe, okay. So I only wired in one switch, only because we ran out of pins. Okay, so I messed up and I wired the momentary switch and not the latching switch. Okay, the problem with that is that, actually, no, I think we're okay. I think I pinned this side already. So we just got to move that around and that should be working. Okay, not a big deal though. We can worry about that later. I don't know what switch 1 is for though. Switch 1 is just on. Assign inputs. Switch 1 doesn't seem to be doing anything. I don't know why it's on though. I don't think it's AC related. Whatever. So we'll switch that really quick and then we'll get that to work there. Okay, I switched the wire around, and switch 2 is doing things. We need to test the output for aux 1, which is the boost control solenoid. Okay, I hear boost control solenoid is clicking, so that is good there. I actually think that's it. So now I just gotta go back through, unplug everything, and put retainers and all that back in, and we should be good. All right, all the retainers are back in. Oh goodness, my knees, my back, all of me. All right, so now the last part of the puzzle here is going to be the power tune display itself. So we don't know if fuel pressure, we know fuel pressure and oil pressure are working. There's no doubt about that. Oil pressure, oil temp, boost, fuel level. All right, so fuel pressure down here is not working. Okay. I don't really want to mess with this because I don't know what I'm doing. Let me pause it here, and we're gonna check to make sure that fuel pressure is in fact working. Fueling. Huh. Strange. So we don't have fuel pressure working for some reason. Pretty sure it was working though. I checked it earlier. Analog inputs. Fuel pressure. Oh, that's a calibration. Oh. Okay, I guess I didn't actually put it in. Check inputs. Right. Okay, so old temp for some reason supposedly set up, but it actually doesn't do anything. So we'll turn that off, save it. And now, okay. Okay, so easy peasy. Fuel pressure is in fact working. Brake switch. I forgot all about the brake switch. Momentary switch. Starting the car with the door closed seems not very smart. Oh, switch one is the brake. So let's change that here. Drive by wire parameters. I think it's actually in protection. Engine protection, stuck throttle, enable, use pedal position, brake switch. Should be switch number one inverted. If I remember right, inverted should mean that the switch is reversed. All right. Okay, I think we're good here. I'm gonna text Chris here really quick to let him know that my side is done, and we'll go from there. See you guys tomorrow.
The next day.